Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller crime films from 2019, titled The Good Liar. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie begins with an old woman signing up for a dating site. At the same time, we see an elderly man, who's also setting up his dating profile, and they are both widowed. The elderly pair then match, and they soon start chatting with each other. Both of them open up about their lives, and after discussing them, they decide to meet for dinner. In the next scene, the man arrives at a restaurant, and heads towards her table. After exchanging their greetings, the woman shares that her husband and son have passed away, and now she only has her grandson, who lives with her. The man, in turn, shares that his wife passed away 3 years ago. As they get comfortable, the man admits that he has used a fake name, Brian, on the dating site, and his real name is Roy Courtney. Hearing this, the woman confesses that she also used a false name online. Her real name is Betty McLeish. They both laugh heartily at the coincidence of their shared deception. After their short meeting, Betty is picked up by her grandson, Stephen. Later on, Roy heads to a nightclub, where his friend, Vincent, is already seated with 2 other people. Roy excitedly shares a business plan with them, promising to quickly double their money. He informs them that he pretended to be a banker, and approached a Russian businessman for an investment scheme. The businessman is willing to invest £800,000 in their scheme, but he firstly wants Roy and his group to invest a small amount just to make sure everything is safe. Roy explains that they will collectively need to put in £200,000, and their money will be doubled. Impressed by his pitch, Vincent and the 2 men agree to participate, and agree not to reveal their true identity. However, one of them, Bryn, mistakenly reveals his name. Just then, Roy gets a call from his earlier date, Betty. The scene then shifts to a movie hall, where Roy and Betty are on their second date. After the movie concludes, they decide to walk home, but Roy's knees suddenly give in, due to which he cannot stand up properly, so Betty helps him walk. The following day, however, we see Roy at his apartment, standing well on his 2 feet. He asks his staff to transform his apartment into an office. Soon after, the men from the other night, along with 2 well-suited Russians, arrive at the makeshift office. Roy explains the investment scheme that will give them a profit in a week, and shows them a keypad that can be used to transfer money into their accounts. They will use this keypad to manage their accounts. After Roy transfers their £200,000 investment into a joint account, the Russians are told to transfer £800,000 into the account too, as planned. Just when everything is going well, Bryn abruptly asks the Russians how much commission they pay to their President Putin. This lame joke irritates the Russians, prompting them to withdraw their investment. Following this, the rest of the investors blame Bryn for not keeping his mouth shut, so Roy says they will need to regain the Russians' trust. After the meeting, Roy goes to meet Betty. He deliberately walks with a stick, pretending to have knee pain. Here Betty mentions that she recently bought a new car and offers to give him a ride. Roy is intrigued when he learns that she bought the car in cash. They then go to Betty's house together, and have a pleasant dinner. Later, her grandson Stephen arrives at the house, and shows displeasure upon seeing Roy. After dinner, Betty and her grandson accompany Roy to his house. But when she realizes that he lives on the top floor, she suggests he stay at her place to avoid climbing the stairs. Stephen is hesitant, but Betty insists, so Roy agrees, and brings his belongings to her house. The next morning, as Roy drinks coffee outside of the house, he notices an unfamiliar man in a car watching him. In the meantime, Stephen voices his concerns and warns his grandmother that she is getting too close to a complete stranger, but Betty brushes him off, as she has started liking her new date. Roy overhears them, but he doesn't take it seriously. His character charms Betty, but the grandson finds his grandmother's remarks irritating. Roy then tells Stephen that he has urgent business to attend to, and Betty tells Stephen to drive him. He's supposed to visit a friend who is suffering from pancreatic cancer at the hospital. However, after Stephen departs, Roy doesn't go inside. Instead, he slips away from the back door, throws off his supporting stick, and walks all the way to his office like a healthy old man. In the next scene, The Russians return to the office, and Bryn starts off by apologizing for his rude remark the other day. As a gesture of this understanding, he reveals that all four of them have doubled their investment fund to make it £400,000. Roy then promptly transfers the extra money to the joint account, and the Russians also transfer their funds into the joint account, finally sealing the deal. Following this, one of the Russians excitedly hugs Bryn, and this is when Bryn realizes that the Russian is armored with wires, just as they hear police sirens approaching. The police force enters the building, and thankfully, Bryn and his partner manage to escape through the back door. Once Bryn and his partner are gone, it is shockingly revealed that Roy, the police force along with Vincent, and the two Russians, were actually working together to scam Bryn and his partner. They have now earned £200,000 with little to no effort. Following the success of his notorious plan, Roy returns and reunites with Stephen at the hospital gate. During dinner, Stephen mentions that he is going away for some time to a place called Spandau Prison, where Nazi war criminals were kept. Stephen then asks whether Roy ever served in the war. The latter takes a brief pause, and admits to having worked in the army, which resulted in the scar on his neck. After dinner, the elderly couple see off Stephen, and Roy once again notices the man in a silver Audi who has been stalking him for some time now. A few days later, Roy and his partner Vincent visit a meat shop owned by the same Russian man who was a part of their plan. They're going to his place because they hear a complaint, and turns out the Russian man demands more money for his services, but Roy isn't going to give him that. Instead, he calls in two of his men. Later, Roy visits Betty's house with his partner Vincent. When she arrives, he introduces Vincent as his investment advisor. Betty is surprised when Roy mentions that he wants to leave something for her from his will. She insists that he should leave everything to his son Robert, but Roy admits that he doesn't like his son's lifestyle. Vincent and Roy then trick Betty into revealing her total wealth, which is about £2.8 million. Impressed by the amount, Vincent starts suggesting that she invest all her money. He claims that she can receive double returns on her investment in the next 5 years. He further tries to convince her to open a joint account with Roy, but Betty says she needs time to make such a big decision. The next morning, Betty, Roy, and Vincent are sitting outside, discussing how Roy made a profit of £20,000 from his investments. Just then, Stephen arrives. He says that he was dismissed early from work today. Stephen notices the investment documents, and reminds his grandmother that she is blindly trusting the old man by offering all of her money to him. Betty is offended by these words, and Vincent also decides to leave as he believes it's not the right time to make a deal. Meanwhile, Stephen finally realizes his mistake and apologizes for causing the mess. Later, Roy suggests to Betty that he should give £10,000 to Stephen from the £20,000 profit he made, and they could use the remaining £10,000 for a trip. Betty is surprised to hear this, but she is thankful. The following afternoon, she cuts Roy's hair, and expresses her desire to go to Berlin. As the two are chatting happily, she starts feeling unwell and suddenly collapses to the floor. Roy tries calling an ambulance, but she asks him to just call her doctor. Later, the doctor reveals that she's had another stroke. A worried Roy asks if there is any treatment, but Betty is hesitant to go through the surgeries and bed rests. She doesn't want to live as if she's already dead. That night, Roy tucks Betty to bed, and realizing her medical condition, he agrees to go to Berlin with her. The next day, while shopping with her, Roy notices he's being followed by Bryn, so he immediately arranges to meet Betty at a restaurant in an hour. Worried, he heads to the underground tube, while being followed by Bryn. Bryn soon confronts him, revealing that he has uncovered their scam scheme. He now wants his $100,000 back, or else he will expose Roy's true identity to Betty. Saying this, he proceeds to corner Roy, but our cunning hero pushes Bryn onto the tracks, and he manages to escape from there, unnoticed. After the incident, Roy reunites with Betty at the agreed place, and expresses his sudden desire to fly off for their trip. In the next scene, the couple arrives in Berlin, where they meet Stephen. He offers to show them around the city, as he seems to know it well. The trio then visits several war museums, and attractive architecture. Following this, Betty decides she needs to explore on her own, and promises to be back at the hotel on time. Next, we see her standing in front of an old building, and sighing deeply. Later, Betty arrives at the hotel with an injured hand. She says that she missed a foot on the pavement, causing her to slip away. Roy tends to her wounds, and gently kisses her hands, making the woman more attracted to his kindness. The following day, Stephen leads the couple to a hotel, an old building that Roy finds disturbingly familiar, as if he has seen it before. Inside an apartment, Stephen suddenly reveals that he checked Roy's service records, and found out that he was deployed here after the war. He had come to this very building many decades ago, 3 years after the war, and a murder even took place on that day. Now that his cover is blown, Roy truthfully admits that he was working for an intelligence agency tasked with hunting down Nazi criminals. In the year 1948, he had come to Berlin to apprehend a powerful Nazi named Martin Geiger. A flashback shows a young British soldier named Roy, and a German, Hans Taub, arriving at the criminal's residence, which is the same room as they are in the present. A man opened the door, and claimed that Geiger was not present at the moment, but the agents insisted on staying, so the man went to the kitchen to prepare some coffee. But he was actually Geiger himself, so he grabbed a knife, and held it against Hans' neck. This forced Roy to put down his weapon, and Geiger somehow got hold of it. Then, in the ensuing struggle, Roy, the British soldier, got killed by Geiger, while Hans survived. Here, Roy finally confesses that his real name is Hans, who served as a British soldier's German translator. He recounts the day when the British soldier was killed, and how he narrowly escaped death himself. The soldier's face was so severely disfigured that Roy seized the opportunity to assume his identity. People already thought that he and Roy had very similar facial features. So, from that day on, he became Roy Courtney, a British citizen. With his proficiency in English, no one questioned his new identity. He moved to London and began living as an Englishman, far from the horrors of war in Germany. Hearing his words, Stephen thinks he's a bad person and warns his grandmother to stay away from him, but Betty stands by Roy's side. She tells Stephen to stop intruding in their matters from now on. Once the grandson leaves the room, Betty expresses her support for Roy by claiming that she feels like she is not alone when he is with her. When the couple is back home, the first thing Betty asks is to call Vincent. She has decided to transfer all her money to a joint account, shared with Roy. Later, Roy meets up with Vincent, but Vincent suggests to Roy that he should leave at least some of the money for Betty to help with her medical condition. The greedy Roy, however, dismisses the idea as he is hell-bent on draining every ounce of her $3 million. A few days later, Vincent visits Betty's home, and assists her and Roy in completing the paperwork for combining their individual assets in the joint account. He then provides them with separate keypads to complete the money transfers. But then, Betty ponders for a while, wondering if she should keep some money for herself due to her health condition. Seeing this, Roy convinces her to follow suit by transferring his entire wealth into the joint account.
I'm all in too.
The two then set a password for the account, and Betty shows a flower picture on the wall, so they decide to use the 6-letter word, lilies. After everything is finalized, Roy pretends that he got a call from his son Robert, who is coming to London and wants to meet. He asserts that he won't bother going there, but Betty encourages him to meet his son. Following her advice, Roy packs his bag and claims that he is going away overnight, and he includes his keypad inside the bagpack. Before leaving, Betty asks him to drink water to remain hydrated as traveling can be exhausting, so Roy heads to the kitchen, and Betty curiously looks at his bag. At the railway station, Roy pretends to be hesitant, so he wishes he didn't have to go away and instead spend the evening with Betty, but she encourages him to meet his son. Moments later, the train arrives, and she warmly sees him off. Following this, the scene shifts to a hotel room, where Roy is seen chilling and drinking. In a state of drunkenness, he rummages through his bag for his keypad, but is shocked to find it missing. He quickly contacts the bank's online customer service, but they're unable to assist him without a keypad. He then asks them if they can courier a new keypad to him, which is possible, but it would take a few days, leaving him feeling distraught. With no other option, Roy returns to Betty's house, only to find it completely empty.
Betty?
He suddenly spots her, holding a keypad in her hand, so he makes up a story that his son's flight was delayed. In response, Betty reveals that she will transfer £50,000 from the joint account to her personal account for each lie Roy tells. She detects multiple lies from the old man, including that his sudden return to her house was just to meet her, and she swiftly transfers a total of $200,000 within a minute. Panicked, Roy eventually asks Betty who she really is, so she directs him to a painting of a lily flower on the wall, hinting at her true identity. In a flashback, we see Betty as a young girl in Berlin, turns out her real name being Lily. Roy, whose real name was Hans, used to teach her English, and it is revealed that she was madly in love with him. One day, while waiting for Lily, Hans hears music coming from a room. When he enters, he discovers Lily's 3 lovely sisters practicing dance. One of them invites him to dance with her, to which he accepts. But Hans turns out to be a pervert, and he soon starts misbehaving with the sister. He even tears her beautiful dress when she tries to walk away. Following the incident, he enters the room where Lily is. In a fit of rage, he forces himself onto her to avenge his insult. When Hans goes downstairs, he notices the 3 sisters standing with their father. They are unaware about what happened with Lily, but Dad berates Hans for the dance incident. The boy lies and says the sister was trying to kiss him, but he is still kicked out. As a result, the humiliated boy later retaliates by defaming the family for their connection to the British soldiers. Betty, aka Lily, reveals that her father was sentenced to death because of the accusations. Her mother then took her own life, leaving only the 4 sisters. But sadly, during the war, 3 of them were killed in a bomb blast, except Lily. After learning her true identity, Roy admits to his faults. Betty brings out a recorder, and tells him that she now has complete proof of his crime. She further reveals that Stephen is a skilled researcher who thoroughly investigated Roy's criminal activities. With his help, she was able to lure Roy towards her. Roy is astounded, but he claims that she still doesn't have proof that he is Hans Taub. In response, Betty tells him about that day in Berlin when she came to the hotel with her injured hand. We see the house Betty had been to was actually her old family home. It had now been converted into a children's charity. Upon gaining entry into her old room, she opened a secret compartment on the floor, but accidentally pressed her hand on the nails there. Inside the compartment, she had hidden a locket. This locket contained strands of Roy's hair in the past. Betty is confident that it will be enough to prove his true identity. As if that weren't enough, Vincent is a part of her team. Turns out Stephen cornered him earlier and threatened to reveal his scams to the authorities, so this left Vincent with no choice but to help them. Betty reveals that Stephen is not actually her grandson. Plus, the guy who regularly eavesdropped outside in a silver Audi is actually one of her grandsons. The 2 are partners, and they helped her stage this entire scenario. Furthermore, she never had a stroke, and even the doctor was in on the act. She did all this to convince Roy to transfer all of his money into the joint account. After saying all this, Betty hands him his keypad, and tells him he now only has £100,000 left in his account. But as she's about to leave, Roy attacks her, but Betty somehow counters, and calls for help. Moments later, 2 men arrive, one is Russian butcher, and the other is a scammed investor. Lily says there's $100,000 left on his account, and later she hears Roy screaming in pain inside. The scene then cuts to a hospital, where we see Roy in a completely paralyzed state. Vincent visits him and offers him a drink, which Roy reluctantly sips. Later on, we see that Lily is not that lonely. She has many children and grandchildren. She's having a grand reunion with her extended family. And this is where the movie ends. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.